So I got a great question from a student about child's pose. And I thought, you know what? This would be great for everybody to potentially hear. So here I am answering this question live. If you also have any questions about a pose or shifts to a pose or anything that we can do to make a pose more comfortable, let me know. You can always post in my Facebook group. You can send me an email, a message, or post in the forum on my website. So this question was about child's pose and the position of the head. Should the head be resting, or is it meant to be getting some sort of stretch down the back? So let's talk about that. So first and foremost, child's pose is a rest pose. So you always want to make sure that you think about that first. So if we think about child's pose as a rest pose, and we think about maybe taking those knees wide, touching the toes, we're going to sink the hips back. But of course, we're only going to sink the hips back as far as feels okay, which is important to remember because that's going to impact potentially our head positioning. So this question was specifically about if the head should be on the mat, if the forehead should connect to the mat. Maybe, right? So if I sink my hips back, I go all the way back to my heels. And if I reach my arms out, my forehead can make it to the mat and it's restful for me. But that may not be the case for everybody. So if I need to stay up a little bit higher on the forearms, my hips don't go back quite as far, and I hang my head, now my head and my forehead are not connected to the mat. And that's okay because the goal is for the rest. So if I want child's pose to be a rest, my forehead might connect to the mat, it might not, whichever is going to be more restful. We want to be able to maybe slow that breath, come back to our focus being on our practice and on our breath and on our mat. Now, for the stretch part of the question, maybe, again, it's always a maybe with me, right? So if I don't need a ton of rest, if a child's pose is cued and I'm like, I'm feeling pretty good, I kind of want maybe a little bit more stretch, I can activate my arms. So instead of maybe my arms being wrapped back by my feet or just kind of relaxed overhead, I can tent my fingers and kind of activate my arms, and I can get more of a stretch in the shoulders, more work in the arms, a little bit more stretch in the back. I can also lift my head off the mat, maybe gaze straight down and kind of get a good stretch. I can also still keep my head on the mat if that feels okay. Right? So maybe I activate those arms and get a little bit more of a stretch. Maybe I don't. For me, it would depend on kind of what I'm wanting when that child's pose is cued or when I find that child's pose. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers your question. And again, if that is useful, let me know in the comments, or if it brings up more questions for you about child's pose or another pose. Let me know. Always happy to help and to answer.